told the court I was violent, but forgot. I still had her text begging me to come back. I can't believe I'm actually typing this out, because it feels like I'm living someone else's nightmare. My hands are shaking right now, partly out of anger, partly out of sheer disbelief, because tomorrow I'm due in court for accusations I never imagined would be thrown at me. The person behind those accusations is Samantha, my ex-girlfriend. She's claiming I was violent. She's telling everyone I hurt her, threatened her, ruined her life. But she's forgetting one critical detail. I've still got her texts begging me to come back. The ones that reveal a very different side to this mess. And if all goes well, they'll prove exactly what happened. Let me back up to a time when I still trusted my own instincts. I was in my senior year of college when I met Samantha. We were both at a friend's birthday party, though, to be honest, I barely knew the birthday girl. A buddy of mine, Ryan, dragged me along for moral support. The place was packed, music thumping so loudly you couldn't hear yourself think. I remember standing awkwardly in the kitchen, making small talk with random people, when Samantha breezed in wearing a bright red jacket and a confident smile. She had a certain magnetism about her. Hair in loose waves, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. We locked gazes for half a second, and I felt this weird flutter, the kind you get when someone stands out in a crowd of strangers. A moment later, she was walking over, offering me a drink, grinning like we were old friends. Everything about her was bold. We ended up talking in the corner for hours, ignoring the party around us, bonding over trivial jokes and stories about our families. She told me she grew up in Ohio, that she'd come to Pennsylvania for college, and how she'd fallen in love with the campus from day one. I told her about my plan to go into accounting after graduation, which admittedly doesn't sound thrilling. But she insisted it was important, that not everyone has the mind for numbers, and that I must be a special type of nerd. I laughed, thinking how refreshing it was to meet someone who could both tease and genuinely encourage me in the same breath. By the end of that night, I asked if I could see her again. She just scribbled her number on a napkin and said, "You better call me before I forget how cute you are." That was how it all began. Samantha and I started dating soon after. In the early days, I couldn't get enough of her company. She was full of life, always suggesting spontaneous trips to new coffee shops or weekend getaways. She had this artistic side. She painted watercolor landscapes and was obsessed with vinyl records. On Friday nights, she'd drag me to obscure jazz clubs downtown, even though I barely knew any jazz standards beyond Take 5. I went along because seeing her light up with that kind of passion made everything feel exciting. She'd sway to the music, eyes closed, absorbing every note. I thought to myself that she was unlike any woman I'd ever met. Fearless, creative, maybe even a bit dramatic in a charming way. When graduation rolled around, she told me she wanted to stay in the city, find a job at a local art gallery or design studio. I'd already secured an entry-level position at a nearby accounting firm, so it made sense for us to see if we could keep things going. We decided to move in together to a small apartment right outside the city. In hindsight, that's probably where the honeymoon phase started to fade. As soon as we started living under the same roof, the illusions we had about each other unraveled, bit by bit. At first, it was little quirks. She needed the thermostat cranked up to near tropical levels, while I preferred open windows and fresh air. She was constantly cluttering the living room with her art supplies, brushes, watercolors, half-finished canvases. I'd trip over tubes of paint on my way to the bathroom. But I told myself those were small things, the natural friction of two individuals adjusting to life together. What I didn't realize was that beneath those minor annoyances lay something more troubling. A controlling streak in Samantha that soon came to dominate every aspect of our relationship. It started subtly. One evening, I was texting an old high school friend, just catching up, and Samantha asked, "Who are you texting?" In a casual tone, I told her, and she demanded to see the messages. When I asked why, she said she just wanted to make sure I wasn't leading on another girl. It felt invasive, but I shrugged it off. Then she began insisting I update her whenever I left work. "Text me the minute you clock out so I know you're safe." At the time, I thought it was sweet. Overprotective, perhaps, but sweet. It became a ritual. Leaving the office, texting her, letting her know if I stopped at the grocery store. If I forgot, she'd say she was worried sick. Over time, that worry morphed into angry accusations. "You didn't text me right away because you're hiding something." I'd stand there, stunned, trying to explain that I was simply in a rush or got caught up finishing a report. She'd act hurt, then guilt-trip me. "I'm just trying to show you I care, but apparently you can't do the bare minimum." I recall one night, about 3 months into living together, I came home late from the office. A colleague, Michelle, had asked me to help finalize some spreadsheets for a client, and I stayed an extra 2 hours. When I stepped into our apartment, Samantha was waiting by the door, arms folded. She said, Michelle, huh? You think I don't know you stare at her whenever you get the chance? I was floored. I'd never indicated any interest in Michelle, nor had Michelle in me. But Samantha was convinced otherwise. She spent the night grilling me, checking my phone, scanning my emails like a detective. It was a bizarre invasion of privacy. I tried to reason with her, show her there was nothing to hide, but her suspicions never fully went away. Our arguments escalated. They stopped being about petty issues like who does the dishes, and turned into full-blown confrontations. Samantha had a temper I'd never seen in anyone. In a fit of rage, she once threw a plate across the kitchen because I refused to admit I'd flirted with someone at a grocery store, which never even happened. The plate shattered against the wall, and I remember standing there thinking, this is insane. We're yelling so loudly that our neighbor, an elderly woman, knocked on our door to check if we were okay. Samantha, tears staining her cheeks, assured her it was just a minor lover's quarrel. I felt humiliated, but something in me still believed it could be fixed. I kept telling myself, she's just insecure. She'll get better if I show her consistent love. For a while, the cycle repeated. We'd fight. She'd unleash accusations, threaten to call the police if I so much as touched her arm to calm her down. Then she'd break down in tears, apologize, and cling to me like I was her only lifeline. She'd say she was terrified of losing me, that she'd been hurt in the past, that she'd see a therapist, but she never followed through with professional help. She just kept asking for my reassurance, demanding proof of my fidelity, combing through my stuff. I felt suffocated, like I was tiptoeing around my own home. The final straw came on a scorching summer afternoon. Our air conditioning had failed, turning the apartment into a sauna. Both of us were irritable. Samantha was in a sour mood because her latest artwork wasn't selling online. I was frustrated by a mounting workload at the office. So we argued, at first about trivial things. Milk left out of the fridge, a missed phone call. Then it spiraled into a confrontation about trust, or the lack of it. She accused me again of cheating, this time claiming she had a gut feeling I was sneaking around. Something in me snapped. I told her we couldn't keep doing this. The second I uttered those words, she flung the TV remote at my chest. Adrenaline surged through me. I didn't know if she was going to hurt herself or me. I wanted to step away, let her cool off. But she marched up, practically cornering me near the hallway. She jabbed a finger in my face and said, "You want to leave? Go ahead. But if you walk out that door, I'll call the police and tell them what you did to me." I swear my blood turned to ice. What I did to her. I never laid a hand on her. Sure, we'd argued, but physically harming her was unthinkable. Her threat hung in the air like a guillotine. I felt trapped, terrified. In that moment, I told her, "I'm done." I grabbed my keys, slipped on my sneakers, and walked out. She chased me to the door, screaming that she'd make me pay, that she'd tell the world I was a monster. For the next few nights, I crashed on my friend Ryan's couch, barely sleeping, playing the scenario over and over in my head. While I was there, my phone buzzed incessantly with texts from Samantha. Her messages were a whiplash of emotions. "You're a liar. You can't do this to me," followed by, "I'm sorry, babe. I love you. I need you. Please come back." She accused me of abandoning her, then switched to begging for my return. She said she'd go to the police if I didn't respond, but then insisted she never wanted to hurt me. My friend Ryan advised me to ignore her, maybe even block her, but part of me still felt responsible. Maybe if I'd done something differently, the relationship wouldn't have degenerated into this chaos. After nearly a week of tense silence, I got a frantic text from Samantha. "If you don't talk to me, I'll tell everyone you hit me." That was the exact moment I realized how dangerous this situation was. She was blackmailing me with false allegations. I started saving every message, screenshotting them, backing them up on my laptop. If she was serious, if she truly intended to paint me as an abuser, I needed proof to protect myself. That's when I decided I had to end all contact. I told her in a final message that I wasn't coming back, that she needed help, and I was done letting her manipulate me. She responded with a fury of texts, some filled with curses, others with pleas. 2 days later, I got a call from a detective. Samantha had filed a complaint, alleging I had been violent toward her multiple times and she feared for her safety. The detective asked me to come to the station to answer questions. I felt nauseous. My mind spun. What if nobody believed me? What if they locked me up based on her word alone? I managed to compose myself enough to calmly explain the situation to the detective. Told him I had evidence suggesting she was not telling the truth. He said I'd have to present it in court. So that's how I ended up with a looming court date, facing charges of domestic violence. My parents were horrified, but they believed me. My job got wind of it because I had to request time off to handle legal matters. And while my boss was sympathetic, I could sense tension around the office. People whisper whenever a coworker is accused of something like that. Even if you're innocent, the stigma sticks like tar. I scrambled to hire a lawyer, who immediately asked to see all the texts, any voicemails, anything I had. He told me that in many cases like mine, the accuser might not realize how damning their own messages can be. The day of the initial hearing was surreal. I walked into the courthouse in a stiff button-down shirt, trying not to panic. Samantha was there, sitting with a poised expression, wearing a modest dress, looking the part of a fragile victim. She even had a friend by her side, someone I vaguely recognized from her art community. They seemed to be whispering comfort to her. I fought the urge to confront her, to ask how she could do this, but my lawyer warned me to keep my distance. During that hearing, Samantha gave a tearful testimony about how I constantly yelled at her, pushed her against walls, and threatened her safety. She even claimed I threw things at her in fits of rage, a complete reversal of reality. I had never felt so helpless. The judge listened attentively, not showing any bias. Meanwhile, the prosecutor painted me as a textbook abuser. He pointed out that Samantha had bruises on her arms. I sat there, fists clenched under the table, wondering where those bruises came from, because I sure as hell hadn't put them there. My lawyer then introduced the text messages. The judge wanted time to review them in detail, so it got postponed. At first, Samantha's side tried to argue that I forged them or manipulated them. But the messages were all still on my phone, complete with timestamps, so we were able to show they were authentic. I watched the prosecutor's face shift as he read lines like, "I'm sorry for screaming at you and throwing things, and I know I threatened to call the cops on you, but I swear I didn't mean it." My heart pounded as page after page displayed her confessions and apologies. Suddenly, it wasn't so easy for her to maintain the facade of being terrified of me. In the next court session, Samantha doubled down, crying that I made her send those texts, that I coerced her. She said something about emotional abuse, that I forced her to apologize in writing. My lawyer calmly pointed out the varying dates and contexts of the messages, showing a pattern of behavior that was clearly hers alone. Rage followed by remorse, threats followed by pleas. It was a roller coaster of manipulation that painted a stark picture very different from her claims of repeated beatings. A forensic specialist was called to verify the authenticity of the messages. The phone records showed no evidence of tampering. The data matched up. The judge's expression grew stonier as the evidence piled up in my favor. Samantha tried to present photos of bruises, but none matched any alleged incident. Worse for her, a couple of them were taken long after I'd moved out. She couldn't explain them consistently. I almost felt sorry watching her unravel, but then I remembered the terror and helplessness I'd felt when she threatened to destroy my life. On the final day of testimony, she became visibly agitated. At one point, she snapped at my lawyer, accusing him of victim blaming and gaslighting. I understood how those terms could be powerful in the right context. Abuse is real, and countless victims aren't believed. But here, in our twisted scenario, she was weaponizing that narrative. After closing arguments, the judge took a recess, then returned with the ruling. I was acquitted of all charges. The judge said there was insufficient evidence to support her allegations, and that my presented messages cast strong doubt on her credibility. I exhaled a shaky breath, my mind roaring in relief. Outside the courtroom, Samantha shot me a withering glare. She brushed past me without a word, practically shoving a reporter out of her way. My lawyer advised me not to engage no matter what she said or did. I followed his advice. Some journalists approached, asking if I wanted to comment. I just shook my head and walked away, uncertain if I could form coherent thoughts. Ryan was waiting for me at the bottom of the courthouse steps, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Congrats, man. It's over," he said, looking as drained as I felt. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece my life back together. Work was still a bit awkward, but people were relieved the charges were dropped. A few colleagues, Michelle among them, actually apologized for ever doubting me, having heard only half-truths through the rumor mill. My parents encouraged me to come back home for a while to decompress, which I did. I stared at the farmland outside their house, remembering simpler times, but also feeling a weird sense of betrayal, as though the world itself had turned on me for a moment. Late one night, when I was alone in my childhood bedroom, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I picked up hesitantly, and sure enough, it was Samantha. She started crying, telling me she'd messed up, that she never wanted it to go this far, that her feelings got out of control. She begged me to come over and talk. I told her no, that we were done, that I'd had enough. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying she was suicidal, that she felt worthless. I genuinely felt a twinge of concern, but I also knew I couldn't step back into that emotional minefield. After I hung up, she sent a few more texts, bouncing between anger and sorrow. Finally, I blocked her. It's been a couple of months since the case closed. I managed to find a new apartment in another part of the city, a place that feels refreshingly blank. No memories, no ghosts lurking in corners. Sometimes I half expect Samantha to show up outside my door, but so far she's stayed away. Part of me wonders if she finally realized the gravity of what she did, or if she simply latched onto a new target for her fears and rage. I try not to dwell on it. Therapy's helping, albeit slowly. I've got a counselor who's helping me navigate the guilt, the anger, the heartbreak. Because yes, despite everything, there's still heartbreak. I did love her once. I loved who she was before that anger took hold and twisted our world into something unrecognizable. I'm sharing this here partly because it's cathartic to lay it all out, partly because I know I can't be the only one who has gone through a hellish situation like this. Nobody warns you that you can be a victim of false accusations just as easily as someone else can be a victim of real abuse. The system tries its best, but it's a messy, painful process that leaves you questioning your trust in people. I didn't deserve what happened to me, and I still feel the sting of betrayal. Tomorrow, I'll stand in front of another judge, this time for a civil hearing about a restraining order I filed against Samantha. I'm hoping the texts that saved me in the criminal case will be enough to keep her from showing up at my doorstep unannounced. I'm anxious, but more than anything, I'm ready for a clean break. I want to move on, bury this chapter of my life, and pray she finds whatever help she needs so she doesn't do this to someone else. And that's it. That's the messy, twisted, heart-wrenching story of how someone I loved turned me into a defendant, how they tried to paint me as violent, but forgot I had their own words that told the truth. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. I honestly never thought I'd pour my personal drama onto the internet, but sometimes you just need a place to lay it all bare. If you're in a similar predicament, please, keep all evidence, protect yourself, and know that you're not alone. People might judge or jump to conclusions, but the truth can still come out in the end. I'm living proof of that. As for me, I'm hoping to rebuild what was nearly destroyed. My peace, my sense of self, and my trust in the idea that not everyone is out to hurt me. I'm holding on to that hope one day at a time.